Hello everyone, welcome to this session. So in this session we are going to discuss our approach regarding the prelims for the next year, that is 2025, with respect to the subject polity. Okay, so I hope all of you are now already starting with your tests etc. for the next year. So we are looking at how to approach prelims, what are some of the important points we have to take care of when we are approaching the polity preparation for our prelims exam. We have got around say 9-10 months for the next exam now. So how are we able to focus upon some of the important areas which are there? What could be our important sources, how we are able to follow them, what are the important trends if at all there are, because always remember that in UPSC one thing which is very clear, the only trend is that trends keep on changing. Okay, so first of all we are looking at the analysis of the number of questions when we come to polity. So on an average, it is well understood that on an average every subject is getting a weightage of around 15 questions. If I talk of every subject, I am talking of the 6 important subjects like polity, which includes polity and some peripheral subjects like governance. Then we are talking about economy, you are talking of geography, you are talking of environment, you are talking of science and technology, you are talking of history and art and culture, and you are talking of miscellaneous segment, that is current affairs and other things related to that. Okay, so you are getting almost 15 questions on an average from every subject, and 10 questions will be miscellaneous. There can be increase or decrease in the number of questions. So if you look at polity also, the last year, this data does not have this year's paper. If you look at this year's paper, there were around 12-13 questions from polity. Okay, last year there were 14 questions, then we had 10. Between 2021, 2019, 2020, there were a huge number of questions, 19 and 18 questions. 2017 again was an outlier, we had 21 questions, and 2013, 12 we had 18, 17 questions. So the only exceptions where polity questions were very low in number, it was 2016 and one in 2011 when it was less than 10 questions. Okay, but by and large you are getting somewhere between 10 to 15 questions, sometimes it can go to 20 also, as is true for any other subject also. In other subjects also many times you see that sometimes geography gets, this year geography had very high number of questions. So that happens with every subject. So we have to be mentally prepared that 15 questions on an average I am going to get from polity. It can be 12, it can be 10, it can be 20 also, it can be 22 also. Normally that is the number. Now when you look at these number of questions, 10-12 questions every year, if I look at the number of questions coming from a particular area of polity, topic wise details, then I can very safely say that the number of questions from legislature are the maximum number in comparison to any other topic in the preparation. Normally when you study when you study polity as a subject, the most important area you perceive to be are fundamental rights and DPSPs. Most of the students are giving lot of time to fundamental rights and DPSPs and going through so many details about fundamental rights. For mains they are very important of course, but for prelims we have to take an understanding from how the UPSC has been asking the questions. So if you look at the questions asked in UPSC, fundamental rights is not a very important area in terms of number of questions asked. Of course हो सकता है मैं आज कह रहा हूँ and और कल के आपके एग्जाम में 25 में बहुत सारे क्वेश्चन फंडामेंटल राइट से मिल जाएं, but that is again something which will be an exception. As of now, if you look at the analysis, majority of the questions in the exam, they are coming from legislature. We can see it from this chart. Majority of the questions are coming from the legislature. So if you look at the analysis of questions over the last 10 years, last 10-12 सालों का डेटा अगर हम देखें और इस साल का भी डेटा अगर मैं इंक्लूड कर दूं, इस साल भी 10-12 क्वेश्चंस थे, we had 10 to 12 questions. And around 5 to 6 questions were from legislature somewhere. So legislature is one of the most important areas when it comes to prelims. You can see this very clearly over here. Number of questions is 43. Okay, so I don't know what is the reason behind legislature getting so much importance from UPSC, but it is very important, it is visible. Almost every year we are looking at least 3 to 4 questions coming from legislature alone. Okay, that is why over a period of 10 to 12 years, we have got 43 questions. So on an average, 3 to 4 questions. Almost 20 to 25% weightage of the questions is coming from legislature. Okay. When we look at other subjects, other topics which are very important, executive. Okay. So we know that in polity, we have 3 important wings of the state: legislature, executive and judiciary. So legislature is making the laws. UPSC is giving them the maximum importance. Executive is implementing the law. It is getting the second most priority. You are getting many questions from executive also, but not as comparative to the legislature. And then of course the judiciary. So ये बहुत clearly visible है. Maximum questions from legislature, then you are having questions from executive, then judiciary. And similarly fundamental rights, it is again parallel to judiciary. So अगर हम list बनाएं कि सबसे important topics क्या हैं, if you are making a list of the most important topics for polity, the topmost priority will be legislature. You have to complete legislature topic very, very thoroughly. You have to go through whatever book you are reading, but I always recommend now how to approach the topics. Okay, I will talk of that also. Let us first of all look at these. So important area is legislature, executive and judiciary, and fundamental rights. ये आपके सबसे प्रायोरिटी वाले एरियाज हो गए. These are the areas which are covering the core of the subject. ठीक है, पॉलिटी प्रिपरेशन में ये कोर एरियाज हैं. आपका 70 to 80% टाइम पॉलिटी प्रिपेयर करने में इन्हीं सब्जेक्ट्स में जाता है. The remaining areas, they are peripheral areas, they are small topics. So areas like DPSP, duties, preamble, introductory part, they are smaller topics. Number of questions is also less, but they are easier to cover. There is certainty that if you are covering them well, the chances of your answers getting correct are much higher. Okay, of course, that is true for almost every subject over here. Polity is one subject where the syllabus is very, very well defined. It is the most defined syllabus than any other subject in the UPSC preparation. You cannot have a well defined syllabus for history. आपको ये नहीं पता किस बुक से क्वेश्चन आएगा, आपको टॉपिक्स पता है. So you can have a situation where there is some element of luck. आपने वो बुक पढ़ा, उससे क्वेश्चन आ गया, नहीं पढ़ा, उससे नहीं आया, डिफिकल्टी हो सकती है क्वेश्चन करने में. आई एम नॉट सेइंग इट इज नॉट पॉसिबल टू मैनेज हिस्ट्री और अदर सब्जेक्ट, नो, बट व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू से इज that other subjects do not have a well defined clear syllabus as in case of polity, because here everything is coming from constitution. Okay, so your primary source of information is the constitution. Whatever is asked, it is somewhere from the constitution, barring a few small things which may be asked from some other areas also, some other laws also which are in news or which have been made recently, or which are important laws in the country, like we have the criminal laws like भारतीय न्याय संहिता which replace the IPC. तो कभी कभी वैसी चीजें न्यूज में रहती है, उस पर भी क्वेश्चन बनते हैं, बट 99% केसेस द क्वेश्चंस आर कमिंग फ्रॉम द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. ठीक है. So legislature, executive, judiciary are the most important topics along with fundamental rights. Then there are some small topics which are important. In that, emergency provisions, then you look at constitutional body. Bodies are very important. Constitutional bodies and this first one, salient features of Indian constitution. तो सबसे पहले अगर हम priority करें legislature, then executive, then judiciary, and then we are looking at salient features of the constitution, the making of the constitution, very, very factual in nature. Whatever questions are coming from that, questions are coming on, features like whether we have federal with unitary features, or we have quasi-federal, or whether we have independent judiciary, or whether we have independent bodies, whether we have, the nature of the constitution in terms of supremacy of judiciary or supremacy of parliament. So ऐसे topics इस पर क्वेश्चन आते हैं, और मेकिंग ऑफ कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन से भी क्वेश्चंस आते हैं. वी आर लुकिंग एट क्वेश्चंस कमिंग फ्रॉम कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट असेंबली, द फैक्ट्स अबाउट द कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट असेंबली, विच कमिटी वाज हेडेड बाय विच इंपॉर्टेंट मेंबर ऑफ द असेंबली. सो वो कुछ फैक्ट्स उधर से भी पूछते हैं. ओके, सो अगर आपको प्रायोरिटाइज करना है तो सबसे पहले आपका प्रायोरिटी होना चाहिए कि DPSPs, फंडामेंटल राइट्स, एग्जीक्यूटिव, जुडिशरी एंड लेजिस्लेचर, ये 4 टॉपिक्स आपके थरली कंप्लीटेड हैं. एंड व्हेन आई एम सेइंग थरली, you should go through the Bare Act also. ठीक है. नॉर्मली हम बुक से प्रिपेयर करते हैं. नॉर्मली वी आर प्रिपेयरिंग विथ अ बुक लाइक मोस्ट ऑफ द पीपल, 80% or 70% people are preparing from Lakshmikant, or you might be following your coaching material, or you might be following any other book also. but I always keep on recommending this. I recommend this in the class also, and I keep on recommending this. The importance of Bayer Act cannot be overestimated. It is a very, very important source for preparing polity. And if you look at the nature of questions which have appeared in the recently conducted exams, not the civil services exams, but some other exams like CDS or geoscientist exam or other such things, the nature of questions are very, very clearly based upon the Bayer Act. Okay? Even our prelims paper, most of the questions are based on Bayer Act. So whatever books you are reading, many of that information coming in the book is having Supreme Court judgments and other laws or other developments which have taken place in the country, or examples of things which have occurred in the past. They are helping you with analysis to write a good answer. But when we talk about the prelims exam, the Constitution's Bayer Act becomes a very, very important source. What is written in the Constitution exactly, without any interpretation, without any addition, without any subtraction? That is the purpose of the Bayer Act. So I would always say that first of all, you prepare your legislature, executive, judiciary and fundamental rights and this constitutional bodies from Bayer Act. Class notes आपके पास होंगे, आपके books होंगे, आपने books पढ़ा है, ठीक है. I'm not saying Bayer Act को cover to cover book की तरह पढ़िए. I'm not suggesting that you are using the Bayer Act as a standard book which you are using as a reference and you are reading it from cover to cover. No. Whatever you have already studied, because now you are appearing in the test, you have already studied something, you have already prepared thoroughly for 1 year, or maybe you have been preparing for 2-3 years also. Now is the time to fine tune your preparation and give final touches to your understanding of concepts. Or some of you are appearing for the next year and you are still preparing, you have started preparing this year. In your case, your fundamentals are not yet completed, you have not yet completed the entire subject. आपके केस में थोड़ा सा अप्रोच डिफरेंट हो सकता है, बट जिन्होंने पहले कर लिया है और अटेम्प्ट इस बार दे रहे हैं, उनके लिए ऑफ कोर्स अब फाइन ट्यूनिंग का टाइम है. बट दोज हु आर still in the beginning stage of their preparation and they are approaching the test series now, for them of course the approach might be different. So different people will have different approach, everything will not be same for everyone. Okay, so those who are appearing for the first time, those who are still preparing, those who are still doing their classes and they are along with that doing the test series, your priorities might be different from the other people. So how do you approach? So when we talk of the fresh students who are still into their classes, how do you approach? So what you have to do is, you have to pay more attention to these topics first. First of all, make sure that these are the topics which are thoroughly completed for you. You are reading these topics for the first time, suppose. So go through your class notes, go through the standard book, whatever book you are following, कोई भी extra information जो class notes में नहीं है वो आपको book में मिल गया. Go through them, and once you are done with your book and material, have a look at the Bayer Act along with that. That what is exactly written in the Bayer Act, so that you get clarity about every keyword which is there. कौन सा word उसमें mention है, कौन सा word mention नहीं है, कई बार उस पर भी question पूछे जाते हैं. I will take some example of some questions also. ठीक है? So for students who are new to preparation, you can start with these topics and then complete the other topics accordingly. Students who are already done with their classes, who are preparing for the next year, who are appearing in these test series, for you what is the mechanism? You have already done the entire topics. So you revise these things first. You try to make them as comprehensive as possible. You go through the class notes, you go through the books, you go through the Bayer Act, you add information from current affairs also, because you have already been through current affairs of 1 year now. And you are also going through current affairs subsequently. So जो extra information वहाँ से भी मिलता है, उसको भी इसमें ऐड कीजिए. जैसे डेप्यूटी स्पीकर पे एक क्वेश्चन पूछा गया था अभी लास्ट ईयर के पेपर में 2023, देयर वाज अ क्वेश्चन ऑन डेप्यूटी स्पीकर अगेन कमिंग फ्रॉम पार्लियामेंट. तो डायरेक्टली कुछ चीजें आपको बुक्स में या बेयर एक्ट में नहीं मिल रही थी, न्यूज़पेपर में उस पर कुछ आर्टिकल्स आए, उससे आपको इन्फॉर्मेशन मिला, तब जाकर वो क्वेश्चन सॉल्व हो सकता था. ठीक है? सो दिस इज अबाउट द इंपॉर्टेंट टॉपिक्स. Apart from these topics, of course, you have some small topics like local government, emergency provisions, elections, miscellaneous ones. You have so many other topics also. I am not saying skip any topic, but you have to complete the topics which are getting lot of priority from UPSC first. Okay, that is how we have to approach. We have to ensure that our scores are maximized. We are not required to cover every nook and corner of everything in the exam. ठीक है? टाइम है तो हम सब कुछ कवर करेंगे. टाइम कम है, किसी ने बहुत लेट प्रिपरेशन शुरू किया, इफ यू हैव स्टार्टेड नाउ एंड यू आर एमिंग एट 2025, you already are pressed for time. So what is the possibility? You have to prioritize. So when we prioritize, we are looking it in this manner. ठीक है. Now, next we are looking at some questions. So, about approach, I told if you look at the approach, what are the sources? I already told you, you have to go through your class notes or whatever notes you have made from whatever sources, and addition from any book. So, whatever notes you have made from classes, you add some relevant information which you are getting in a book in addition to what you have done in your class, because class notes will always have some limitations in terms of coverage. Everything cannot be covered in details in a class. Okay? And then of course, refer the Bayer Act along with the topics. Okay? And your NCERTs. If you are new to the subject, you are finding difficulty in getting a heck of things when we talk of polity. If you are finding difficulty in understanding polity initially, you can go through the NCERTs also. NCERT class 11th, only class 11th. Okay? So, only class 11th, there are 2 NCERTs. The more important one to my understanding is political theory. You can go through this. Okay? So, these are the general sources which we can use to approach the polity preparation. Now, we are looking at certain things in terms of questions. The first thing I want to highlight is that many times themes are repeated in the exam. Okay? What do we mean by theme? So, themes means when we are talking of a topic, when you study, suppose we talk of the initial part of our constitution, the introductory part. There we start with the meaning of constitution and constitutionalism. We are discussing what is the meaning of this word called constitutionalism and how it is different from this word called constitution. तो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनलिज्म और कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के बीच का डिफरेंस कई बार डिस्कस करते हैं. कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनलिज्म का मतलब क्या होता है, व्हाट इज मेंट बाय दिस वर्ड कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनलिज्म, एंड व्हाट आर द एंड ऑब्जेक्टिव्स ऑफ दिस वर्ड. What are the end objectives of this word? So, constitutionalism is meaning a situation where the government has limited powers. Constitutionalism means there is lack of arbitrariness. So, this is a theme. Now, UPSC in various exams, it has repeated this theme, it has asked the same question on what is the meaning of constitutionalism in different ways in different questions. So, what I am trying to say is that themes are often repeated in prelims also and in mains also. I will take some examples. I will take this example of constitutionalism, how in different exams the same question has been asked in different ways. And when I talk of themes, I am not just talking of civil services exam, I am also talking of the same theme coming from a different exam conducted by UPSC, like say CDS or say CAPF or any other such exam. ठीक है? तो what question is asked on the Supreme Court in this particular exam, a similar question on the similar powers of Supreme Court may be asked in a different exam also, or it may be repeated 2 or 3 years later also. So, you are having a question, you are getting some options in the question, and there is a theme on which the questions have been framed. So, on the same theme, some different option which was there, which was incorrect in this particular year, there could be a question based on that option in the next year. Okay? So, when we look at this very, very important example, it will become more clear. We will take another question after this, and then we will see what is the very, very important point to remember while we are answering a prelims polity question. how UPSC gives answers to polity prelims questions. That also is a very, very important thing to understand for all of us. So I will come to that later on. So first of all, let us look at this question. Consider the following statements. Constitutional government is one which places effective restrictions on individual liberty in the interest of state authority. Okay. Second statement says it places effective restrictions on the authority of the state in the interest of individual liberty. So I just now mentioned that constitutionalism means the idea of having a limited government, the idea of having no arbitrariness. So what do we mean by constitutionalism? The limited government. What has the question asked? Constitutional government. So what is a constitutional government? A government which is following constitutionalism. That government will be said to be a constitutional government. It is working as per the constitution. One of the very, very important objectives of constitution is to provide rights to citizens and to create limits on the powers of the state. Because if powers are not limited, the state will become arbitrary. So how does our constitution provide for constitutional government? Does it provide it by putting limitations on liberty of individuals? If limitations are put on individual liberties, how does it put limits to the powers of the government? So that is not the answer. The second statement says it places effective restrictions on the authority of the state in the interest of individual liberty. So this is the correct answer. This is the correct answer because it is actually implying that there should be limitations on the powers of the state also to enable the people to enjoy their rights. Getting it? So this question was asked in 2014. The answer was 2 only. Okay? Now, so here we have explanation. The government state which is controlled by a limited and government by a constitution is called as a constitutional government, and constitutionalism means belief in a constitutional government or belief in a constitutional principles. The essence of constitutionalism lies or rests in the limitations which are imposed on the organs of the government to ensure that democratic principles are not destroyed. Okay? Now, next question we are looking at. Now this is a 2021 question. That was 2014, this is 2021. Constitutional government means a representative government of a nation with federal structure. That does not mean constitutionalism. A constitutional government having a federal structure, that does not essentially put limits to the powers of the state or the government. A government whose head enjoys nominal powers. Again, this does not mean constitutionalism. Okay? A government whose head enjoys nominal powers, we are talking of a presidential, we are talking of a parliamentary form of government like UK or India. It does not necessarily mean limits to the powers of the state. So this is also not the correct statement. A government whose head enjoys real powers. Again, this is not correct. Now we are talking of presidential form of government. So presidential form of government बन गया लेकिन powers पे control नहीं है president के, तो arbitrary होगा. It will not be constitutionalism or it will not be a constitutional government. So last statement, a government limited by the terms of the constitution. So again this is doing what? Putting limits to the powers of the state. Putting limits to the powers of the state. So this was 2021. Now let us look at last year's question, 2023. Which one of the following statements best reflects the chief purpose of constitution of a country? Okay? What is the most important purpose of having a constitution? The most important purpose is to have some laws which are restricting the government also, which are putting limits to the powers of the state also. That is the most important function. That means we are trying to achieve constitutionalism by having a constitution. Constitution is a means and constitutionalism is a end in itself. So first option is it determines the objective for the making of necessary laws, not correct. It enables the creation of political offices and government, not correct. It defines and limits the powers of the government. This is the most important reason of having a constitution. It secures social justice, economic, social equality and social security. It is there, but not the primary function. The primary function is to put limits to the powers of the state. So again the same question has been asked in the year 2023. 2014 के पहले भी एक क्वेश्चन पूछा गया था. I think it was 2011 or 12 where the same theme was asked then also. So already I have given you at least 3 questions within 10 years where the theme is same. Now we are looking at another example. There is another theme which has been repeated. So here the theme is about the exclusive powers of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So ये question आया. Which of the following, this is a 2022 question, which of the following is our exclusive powers of Lok Sabha? To ratify the declaration of emergency, ये लोक सभा में भी होती है, राज्य सभा में भी होती है. So it is not exclusive. In fact, राज्य सभा को हम कह सकते हैं कि exclusive powers हैं. अगर लोक सभा डिसॉल्व है तो भी इमरजेंसी राज्य सभा के अप्रूवल से चल सकती है जब तक लोक सभा वापस नहीं आती है. ठीक है? So this is not the correct statement. To pass a motion of no confidence against the Council of Ministers. This is the correct statement. Because Article 75 Clause 3 very clearly mentions that Council of Ministers shall be collectively responsible to Lok Sabha. So ये वहाँ से आएगा. It is the correct statement. To impeach the President of India. We know that Article 61 provides for the impeachment of the President. It can be done by majority in both the houses, not a single house. तो special power नहीं होगा. तो ये भी गलत हो गया. So the answer is only 2. Right? Now, let us look at another theme. Rajya Sabha has equal powers with the Lok Sabha in. So what is again happening? So it is basically, the theme is same. Which house has got what powers? तो आप जब ये टॉपिक पढ़ते हैं लेजिस्लेचर का, you study about what are the powers where Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha has got same powers. What are the areas where Lok Sabha has got special powers and Rajya Sabha is not having those powers? Then you look at what are the areas where Rajya Sabha has got special powers and Lok Sabha does not have those powers. So you are getting this very clearly. And then you can conclude that which body is more powerful. We cannot say which body is more powerful. They have got their unique requirements. For running the government, Lok Sabha is more important. For running the federation, Rajya Sabha is more important. Okay? So that is how you have to understand and analyze. तो यहाँ पे एक statement आया. First one, the matter of creating a new All India service. तो Rajya Sabha has equal powers पूछ रहा है आपसे. Creating an All India service under Article 312 is a special power of Rajya Sabha. Rajya Sabha passes a resolution with 2/3 present in voting. In the Rajya Sabha, the Parliament will now get the power to create a special All India service. तो special power Rajya Sabha की है, not equal powers. Second one, amending the constitution. This is correct. Article 368 provides equal powers to the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. To amend the constitution, you need to have a special majority of 2/3 present in voting and more than 50% of the majority of the house in both the houses of parliament. ठीक है? तो दोनों houses बराबर हो गए उसमें. There is no problem in this. Next, a removal of the government. This is not the correct answer क्योंकि ये कहाँ आएगा? अभी हमने डिस्कस किया. Lok Sabha, collective responsibility, no conference motion. Okay? And fourth one is making cut motions. This is also Lok Sabha's special power. इसमें राज्य सभा बराबर नहीं है. तो एक ही इसमें स्टेटमेंट है जहां पे बराबर है. So answer is B. So you can see that a theme of a question is very frequently repeated. There have been repetitions in terms of many themes in the polity prelims also. दो आपको मैंने सामने एग्जाम्पल दिए. इसके और भी एग्जाम्पल्स आप देखते हैं कई बार रिपीट होते हैं क्वेश्चंस with respect to fundamental rights. Right to privacy is a part of Article 21. It has been repeated multiple times. ठीक है, 2 बार शायद पूछा गया ये. Which right is belonging to Article 21? Because Article 21 is the most interpreted article of the Constitution. उसको कई बार इंटरप्रेट करके उसका मीनिंग को बढ़ाया गया. उस पर कई बार क्वेश्चन पूछे आ चुके हैं. राइट टू मैरी अ पर्सन ऑफ वन चॉइस इज अ पार्ट ऑफ फंडामेंटल राइट अंडर विच आर्टिकल? ये पूछा गया, ठीक है. So that is a repetitive theme in the fundamental rights topic. Okay, so this is about the themes being repeated. Now we have to discuss another very important point. Now I am not putting a question over here on the slide, but I am giving you some examples through some questions which have appeared in the exam, how to approach a question given in a prelims polity paper. What is the manner in which UPSC is giving answer to questions? So for example, let us take a very simple question. It was a question from 2021 prelims. Okay? The question asked you, what was the exact status of Indian Constitution on 26th January 1950. Okay? What was the exact status of Indian Constitution on 26th January 1950? So this date was, we all know, it was Republic, the first Republic Day when we actually adopted our Constitution. So on this date, what was the exact status of Indian Constitution? ये क्वेश्चन आपसे पूछा गया, 2021 प्रीलिम्स का क्वेश्चन था. ऑप्शंस क्या थे? बेसिकली द वर्ड्स विच डिस्क्राइब द वर्ड रिपब्लिक इन आवर कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, the nature of the Indian state in the preamble. We know that there are 5 words: sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic, republic. These 5 words are describing the nature of the Indian state. What is the nature of Indian state? It is sovereign. It can take its own decisions. What is the nature of Indian state? It is socialist. It has got mixed economy. What is the nature of Indian state? It is secular. It has got no, religion and state are separate to an extent. Then it is democratic. We have a democracy, parliamentary form of government, and it is republic. We have an elected head of the state. So what is the exact status of the Indian Constitution today? The preamble has these 5 words. ठीक है? तो अगर आज का पूछते तो 5 वर्ड्स आंसर में आ जाते. क्वेश्चन में आंसर में 4 स्टेटमेंट्स हैं. आपको चारों में से बेस्ट स्टेटमेंट चुनना है. What does the question say? One statement said sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic, republic. 5 words mentioned है. Another statement says sovereign, socialist, democratic, republic. So sovereign, socialist, democratic, republic, secular word हटा दिया गया. Another option was sovereign, secular, democratic, republic. इसमें socialist word हटा दिया गया. और लास्ट में क्या लिखा गया? sovereign, democratic, republic. So you are having these 4 options in front of you. What was the exact status of Indian Constitution on 26th January 1950? So we have to know that in the original preamble, we did not have these 2 words. It only had sovereign, secular, sovereign, democratic, republic. Socialist और secular नहीं था वहाँ पे. So अगर हम आपसे पूछें कि Constitution का exact status, if we ask you what was the exact status of the Constitution on this date, normally if we have not studied polity in details, first timers, if you are studying polity today, you're starting with it, you don't know much details about the Constitution, you will say this is the correct answer. Because original preamble did not even mention socialist and secular. ये दोनों थे ही नहीं वहाँ पे. तो exact status क्या था जो Constitution खुद बता रहा है अपने बारे में. Okay? So these 3 were the words which described it. But many students got this answer incorrect. ठीक है? Most students got it correct, but many got it incorrect also. Though it appears to be a very simple question. Why did many students got it incorrect? Because if you read the Constitution, if you know the meaning of socialism in the Constitution, we have a certain part of the constitution which is dealing with DPSPs, Directive Principles of State Policy. So DPSPs in the constitution, they are very clearly providing socialist principles. They are providing socialist principles. Even in the original preamble, it mentioned about justice, economic, social and political. So though the word socialism was not mentioned here as a part of the nature of the state, the constitution did have many socialist features in DPSPs and in the preamble and in the fundamental rights also. So anybody who has knowledge of the constitution will definitely say that the constitution was socialist also on the 26th January 1950, though the word was not directly mentioned. Similarly, the meaning of the word secular means that we don't have religion and state working very closely. In general, state and religion are separate, and we are having freedom of religion for people. So whatever we mean by this word secularism, they were also present in our constitution in terms of fundamental rights, by providing right to equality, in terms of freedom of religion also, and by ensuring that there is no discrimination only on the basis of religion, and by ensuring that the state does not have any official state religion. So whatever is meant by secularism, it was well established in the constitution from the first day itself. But UPSC gave this statement as the correct answer. Okay? So if you apply your brain, if you apply your mind and you use interpretation, then this answer would be correct. Then this answer would be correct. That when we talk about nature of the Indian constitution or status of the Indian constitution, it was sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. But since the constitution itself did not describe itself as socialist and secular, UPSC went with which statement? This statement. So what I am trying to explain through this entire discussion is that normally, as a thumb rule, when a question of polity is asked from you in prelims exam, normally UPSC will give the answer on the basis of plain and simple reading of the constitution. What is written in the constitution is the most important source of giving answers. What you interpret from that is not always the correct answer, because remember, we are writing an objective exam. In objective exam, interpretations can make it subjective. So as far as possible, of course, subjectivity cannot be ignored altogether, because we are writing a humanities answer. And polity is a subject where the courts are also giving interpretations very frequently. But to make it as objective as possible, generally UPSC is going by what is there in the constitution. It is not going by interpretations given by courts. It is not going by interpretations made by people to give an answer. Generally, they are answering only on the basis of the constitution, not on the basis of interpretations. So to be safe while giving answers to polity questions, because remember, polity is probably the one subject where the syllabus is well defined, and as a result, most of the people are attempting the maximum number of questions in polity. And this is the only subject where people are mostly reading the same book, Lakshmikant. Still, there are a large number of people who are getting questions wrong. Why? Because UPSC is answering questions on the basis of constitution. You are many times answering questions on the basis of your misunderstandings or misconceptions regarding the constitution. कि constitution में ये भी लिखा होगा, वो भी होगा. You do not have to answer on that basis. You do not have to answer questions on the basis of interpretations of other people or the courts, but as far as possible, go by what is written in the constitution. I will take one more example to make it more clear. Okay? So, okay. So, there is another question which came in prelims 2020. This question was that which of the, I am just reading out the question so that then I can write it down also. So the question was, which of the following statements are correct? And you had two statements. The first statement talked about basic structure of the constitution. What does it say? The Constitution of India defines its basic structure in terms of federalism, secularism, fundamental rights and democracy. In terms of federalism, democracy and secularism. And the second statement is the constitution provides for judicial review. Okay? To safeguard individual liberties. Okay? Now, what was important in this statement was that if you look at this question, first of all it says Constitution of India defines its basic structure in terms of federalism, democracy and secularism. So does the constitution define basic structure? No, it has been given by Supreme Court, and even Supreme Court has not defined it clearly. It has only said that basic structure includes the following important features. So ये statement तो गलत होना ही होना है. It is not defined. Second statement, constitution provides for judicial review to safeguard individual liberties. Now this was a question in 2020. So judicial review, we all study judicial review as a very important topic. We all study that Supreme Court and High Courts, they have got powers of judicial review. But does the constitution use the term judicial review anywhere? No, it does not use the term. Here this word judicial review is put in quotes. What does it imply? It implies that the constitution has mentioned about this term somewhere and it provides for individual liberties. It protects individual liberties. So what did the UPSC give the answer? It said no. This statement is also false. So both of them were said to be incorrect. So this again gives us a clear idea that when it comes to giving an answer to the questions in prelims, UPSC by and large is going by what is safely provided in the constitution, what is clearly provided in the constitution. Interpretations can be used, but while writing mains answers, forget interpretations as long as the question is directly based on the constitution. अगर question में scope है interpretation का, for example अगर question ने ये पूछा that right to privacy is a fundamental right under which article, then of course you have to, based on the Supreme Court judgment, you have to give the answer that it is article 21. But here there is no scope. You have to rely on the constitution. So this is a very, very important suggestion to all of you. Study polity in details, go into all analysis, collect case judgments also, but use them in mains. In prelims, remember the judgments. If the question is directly on a judgment, then of course it will be relevant. But while giving an answer to a straightforward polity question, you should go by the constitution. Don't interpret too much, don't think too much. Okay? इसके और भी examples हो सकते हैं. There can be another example also. There was a question in 2021 prelims. Again 2021 prelims, there was a question. Again, which statements are correct? There were two statements. This question was regarding the judiciary. There were two statements. One statement said that CJI can appoint retired judges upon approval of president. ठीक है, CJI can appoint retired judges on approval of President. And second statement is the High Court can review its own judgment as the Supreme Court does. Okay? So this statement, it is a partially correct statement. It does not give the full information about the appointment of retired judges because their consent is also required. But still what has happened is UPSC in various questions, if it is giving a partially correct statement also, it generally is giving that statement to be correct. Because every detail may not be put in a prelims objective question. So अगर जो statement में जो information है वो सही है, वो गलत नहीं है, और भी चीजें ऐड हो सकती हैं. In that case, UPSC is giving that statement to be correct. So उन्होंने इस statement को correct बोला है. ठीक है? What is the second statement? High Court can review its own judgment as the Supreme Court does. So many people, they gave this statement also to be correct because the High Court does review its own judgment. Review means High Court ने judgment दिया और बाद में उसी judgment को खुद से change भी कर दिया. So High Courts do review the judgments of their own also. But this power of the High Court is not given in the Constitution. This power of the High Court has been given by the Supreme Court by interpretation of certain things, by saying that since the High Court is a constitutional court, it is a superior court, it is a part of higher judiciary, it should also have the power to review its own judgment. Because it has the power of superintendence over all courts and tribunals within the country, within the jurisdiction of the High Court. So it can review. But the Supreme Court has been given this power to review its own judgment from Article 137 of the Constitution directly. So Supreme Court is getting this power directly from the Constitution. High Court is getting this power through interpretations of Supreme Court. So they are not similar powers. Though the exercise of the power is similar, but the source of the power is not same. So question क्या था? High Court can review its own judgment as the Supreme Court does. So people who went by interpretation of the Constitution on the basis of Supreme Court judgment, they gave this statement to be correct. UPSC said this statement is wrong. Why? Because Supreme Court gets this power from the Constitution, High Court does not get it. So you have to be very careful of this point. If you are answering a question of prelims polity, try to base yourself as far as possible on the Constitution. If of course, if the question is giving a scope of doing something else, you can do that. But as a safe choice, relying on the Constitution is always better. Okay? So this is what I had to convey. All the best to all of you. I hope you have understood certain things which we have discussed, and I hope you incorporate them in your preparation also. Okay? Thank you everyone.